This is Northwest Reports. I'm Maleeha Syed. Today we're sitting down with the filmmaker directing the upcoming season of Origins, a docuseries project that highlights our region from an insider's perspective. Origins is a Cascade PBS project that gives regional filmmakers $40,000 to create a 5-part docuseries on communities that they belong to. Past projects have centered around refugees in Washington and the experiences of growing up Black in Seattle. In this episode, we sit down with Samuel Wolfe, who was recently announced as this year's grant winner, to chat about his upcoming series on the Salish Sea's last reef netters. Samuel talks about what reef net fishing is and its significance to Indigenous communities in the region, how his own identity impacts his perspective on the topic, and what he hopes to see come out of the project. Can you just tell me about yourself and your background in filmmaking and your relationship to the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah. My name is Samuel Wolfe. By day, I am a senior manager of design and creative strategy at a local tech company. So I manage a small team of designers, and then the individual contributor portion of my role focuses on acting as creative lead for various different marketing campaigns and initiatives. And then by nights and weekends, oftentimes they're sleepless nights and weekends, I am a freelance filmmaker.
Well, this year you are the grant winner of the Origins project at Cascade PBS. And so this is a project where annually someone gets $40,000 to make this 5-part docuseries. So what made you want to apply?
Yeah, so it's kind of a long story. So last summer, my business partners and I shot a public service announcement campaign for the newly established Maritime Washington National Heritage Area, which is definitely a mouthful. So if you don't know what national heritage areas actually are, they are places where historic, cultural, and natural resources combine to form cohesive landscapes that are culturally significant. So in the case of the Maritime Washington National Heritage Area, that's state parks, it's the ferry system, it's working waterfronts. So the purpose of this marketing campaign was to instill a sense of pride in the citizens and people that actually live in the heritage area, as well as inspire them to go out and actively get involved in Washington's maritime heritage.
Our folks have traveled the waterways here since time immemorial. The salmon are literally the cornerstone of who we are as a people.
So we talk to ferry captains, we talk to state park rangers, we talk to fishermen, we talk to boat builders. And because of our connection with Maritime Washington as a client, I subscribed to their social channels, I was reading their blogs. And in late last year, I came across a story about a woman named Ellie Kinley of the Lummi tribe. And the headline was something like, Lummi Nation is striving to keep this ancient fishing technique alive. And so I started digging in, and I found out that this woman, Ellie, is the last Lummi Nation individual with a reef net fishing permit. So I read the story, it was captivating, and I kind of put it on hold. But then when I read about the Origins grant, and I saw that they were searching for stories rooted in connection, heritage, identity, I immediately thought of that story about reef net fishing, went back, reread the article, and sort of did a deep dive on reef net fishing, started unpeeling the layers, and just thought it would be a perfect fit for the Origins program.
Yeah, and I think the 2 parts to this next question are, what is your series about? And then the subtext is, what is reef net fishing?
Yeah, so I'll start with reef net fishing, and I will preface/caveat that I am not a fisherman, much less an expert on anything related to reef net fishing, so I'll describe it using layman's terms. Essentially, reef net fishing is an ancient fishing technique practiced by the Lummi Nation and other Coast Salish people for millennia.
1, 2, 3.
The way that it works is reef netters suspend a net between 2 static vessels. In generations past, those were canoes. Now they're more static vessels and more advanced vessels. And you essentially allow your catch to swim into the net. And it's interesting for many different reasons. I'll describe just a few of them. For one, it is a passive technique. So the rigs are static, which means you're letting the fish come to you. Because the rig is static, you're burning less fossil fuel, you're not doing any damage to the surrounding ecosystem. So there's been a resurgence about reef net fishing in the public conversation. A lot of people refer to it as the most sustainable way to catch fish because of those reasons. It's also interesting because it's an intimate form of fishing in the sense that you're actively watching your catch swim into the net. And if you catch a species or a specific type of sea life that you didn't intend to catch, you can actually just toss it out. So there's minimal bycatch mortality, which is just a fancy way of saying that you're not killing other species besides the catch that you're intending to capture. So that's what reef net fishing actually is at a very surface level. I should also mention, most importantly, that reef net fishing is intrinsically tied to Native culture, heritage, and identity, particularly for the Lummi Nation. This was a birthright for the Lummi. And one of the things that I want to do with the series is center that first and foremost. You know, I mentioned that a lot of people describe reef net fishing as the most sustainable way to catch salmon. And that's true in a way, but it's also very surface level. When I was talking to Ellie Kinley about whether or not she wanted to do this project, I mentioned that to her. I said, yeah, people refer to it as the most sustainable way to catch salmon, and it just seems like a really great story. And I'll never forget what she told me. She said, it is a really great story, but only if you start at the beginning. So that's what the series is going to do. It's going to start at the beginning.
Yeah, what's the series going to look like?
So in terms of how I'm imagining structuring the series, the first thing I'm looking to do is center reef net fishing in its Lummi Nation heritage. Ellie Kinley is going to be our evangelist through that process. She's going to be our main character. We're going to follow her along and find out how she became the last Lummi Nation individual with a reef net permit and explore what that means for her as an individual, what it means for her family, what it means for her as a Lummi Nation woman. Another thing we're going to do is just explain reef net fishing. As you saw in my earlier answer, it can be daunting to try and describe. So we're going to do a deep dive and speak to a lot of knowledge holders and experts on reef net fishing to describe it so that people have a really clear sense of why it's important and also what it actually is. Another aspect of the series that we want to cover are different allies. There are only 12 fishing captains with a reef net fishing permit in the Coast Salish Sea. So that means 11 of them are non-native. One of the things that I've been surprised by is that, you know, that's a cordial relationship. It's not a competition. And those are words that Ellie has said herself. So I really want to explore those 11 other fishermen and expose how they're functioning as allies and ensuring that reef net fishing continues on for generations. And then lastly, I want to explore what the potential future looks like for reef net fishing. It's interesting because I've learned that reef net fishing is this core tenet of Lummi Nation heritage, yet a lot of kids don't even know what it is, much less have never done it. So maybe it spurs and accelerates the return of reef net fishing to the Coast Salish Sea in a perfect world. That's aspirational, but it's something that I'd be really proud of.
Are there particular visuals that you have at the top of mind that you want to incorporate into this docuseries? Or are you going to kind of wait and see as it unfolds what you're going to do to showcase reef net fishing in the Lummi Nation?
Yeah, so I've actually traveled up to Lummi Island and seen some of the reef net fishing rigs, and they're just so inherently interesting in isolation. I saw them docked and parked on the beach, and they're just this fascinating structure, and you drive by them, and if you didn't know, you would say, what is that mess of metal? So yeah, exploring just the intricacies of the rigs themselves. Hopefully we're able to go out and capture them in the sea, not just docked on land. And then just the beauty of the natural ecosystem involved with fishing. You know, anytime you're shooting something on the water, it's inherently beautiful. So yeah, pulling fish out of the water, handling fish, aerial shots of the sea. It's so ripe for visual storytelling.
One of the specifications for the Origins project is that the person who's creating the docuseries is also from the community that they're covering in some aspect. Could you talk a little bit about your community?
So when I initially read that requirement for the Origins program, I had a little bit of hesitancy in going forward because I'm an enrolled tribe member, but I'm not a member of the Lummi Nation. I'm actually a member of Choctaw Nation, which is a tribe based in Oklahoma. But as I started researching more about reef net fishing, I felt a connection to the story because the Lummi Nation have been separated from this practice that they've been taught is so intrinsically tied to their heritage and their identity. And in a way I related because I was raised in the Pacific Northwest. I've never even been to Oklahoma. So, I've heard from my grandma, who is the individual that my Choctaw heritage stems from, that, yeah, we are members of Choctaw Nation, but just because of life and things that happen, our family doesn't live in Oklahoma anymore. So it's this interesting paradigm where, I feel a strong sense of connection to Choctaw culture, but also like, am I really Choctaw if I don't live on the reservation? Hell, I don't even live in Oklahoma. So when I was talking to Ellie in our early conversations together, she's like, yeah, when I was a kid, I literally hadn't even heard of reefnet fishing. And it resonated with me because I didn't even become an enrolled tribe member till I was in my 20s. It was one of those situations where you're the kid on the playground that says, oh, yeah, I'm Native. And since then, I've grown a lot more and I've learned. And it was one of those things where I grew up knowing that we had this Native connection. But my grandma, when she was just 17 or 18, married someone in the Navy, and the rest was history. So she never had a reason to go back to Oklahoma and live in that environment. But when I was in college, she did her due diligence, took our family tree paperwork into the tribe and said, hey, we want to make this legitimate. Can we please enroll as tribal members? So I was late to the game, and I've been doing a lot of catch up. So it's been a fascinating journey.
Do you feel like the way that because I read your pitch essentially for this project, and I think I read somewhere that you felt a sense of imposter syndrome coming into this, even though you are Indigenous, covering another tribe. How is that going to inform your approach to the docuseries?
Totally. I mean, my guiding light for this entire project, especially when I'm doing work with the Lummi in particular, is just to get out of the way. Like, that is my directive to myself, is to just get out of the way and let them tell their story, not to project anything, and just to be a good listener. That's my only option, really. One, I'm not a member of the Lummi Nation. Two, I'm not a fisherman. So that's one of the things I'm most excited about on this project, is just to be able to immerse myself in that world and learn. Because I am not a member of the Lummi Nation and I have the sense of imposter syndrome that it's not really my story to tell, one of the things that we're trying to do is leverage the connections that Ellie Kinley has with the broader community, specifically the creative community. If possible, we want to enroll tribal kids that want to get their hand in filmmaking, and just have them on set learning. I don't know that I have that much to teach, but, if I were that age and someone gave me that opportunity, I would have jumped on it.
And could you talk a bit about your connection to the water? Because it sounds like you co-founded a company dedicated to maritime storytelling, and water's so central to this docuseries.
Yeah, so about a year ago, a friend of mine and a mutual friend of ours founded a company called Fishboat Media. The three of us knew that we wanted to do more video storytelling, and when we got to talking, we found out that we had this mutual connection to prior work involving storytelling about the water and communities around the water. One of my co-founders, Jeremy Johnson, is a longtime maritime photographer, and his work has appeared in dozens of different water-based magazine publications, both print and web. Tyler Rowe, he has a creative agency based in Port Townsend, and just by nature of where he's located, he has numerous water-based clients. And then the summer prior to founding the company, I had done a short promo piece for Washington Main Street for Coopville on Whidbey Island, which is where I grew up. So we got to talking, and we're like, hey, there might be this really niche area of storytelling that we can sort of carve a space out for ourselves. And, shortly after forming that company, we submitted the RFP, the request for production, to produce that PSA campaign for Maritime Washington. So that was our inaugural project together. And now that we are taking on Origins, it feels like just an incredible step in the right direction in terms of momentum. I just feel so grateful that we're able to keep telling stories about things we care about.
What was it like getting the news that you were the grant winner for this project? Did you see it coming?
It was so awesome. As a creator, just hearing yes is such a breath of fresh air, no matter what, no matter what circumstances you're hearing it. If you're pitching a concept and you see that it lands, you're so excited. So just amplify that by 10 when I found out that I was going to be able to produce content that I was passionate about. This isn't client work. This is a story that I feel passionate about and that I want to put out into the world. So, yeah, I was just ecstatic. And then after the initial excitement, the second thing I felt was validation. First, that Cascade PBS saw this as a story worth telling, and that they thought that I was capable of executing it at a high level. I had been honing my pitch for friends and family about reef net fishing, and a lot of times I would get stuck in the weeds and stumble on technical details. So when I fleshed out the treatment for origins, it took a long time because I didn't want to just word vomit. I wanted to make sure that the nuance landed with an audience, and I was just thrilled that it did. And then third, just the way that the program is structured is something that I've not really encountered before. I'm really excited to be able to leverage the resources that Cascade PBS is willing to put toward the program, both monetarily and also just like as a team of collaborators. Reading the application, it said that, if you're selected, you'll be able to leverage the Cascade PBS team as a creative sounding board to look at edits or to pitch pivots as they come along, especially with documentary storytelling, nothing happens as expected. So if for some reason a lead falls through or the story needs to change, the fact that I wouldn't be beholden to client expectations, I would have a soft spot to land in terms of a team of collaborators, that was huge.
What are some of the immediate next steps? I know we're kind of in celebration mode right now, but what comes kind of in the next few weeks for you?
So we've reached out to Ellie Kinley. She was our first contact that we wanted to enroll with the project because, like I said, she is the last reefnet permit holder of the Lummi Nation, and we just felt that the perspective that she had shared and the different print stories that we read was so resonant. We wanted to get her buy-in and ensure that A, that she had capacity to do it, B, that she indeed thought it was a compelling story to share in this format, and C, that she felt like she could trust us to tell the story. And after we crossed that bridge, the rest of the pieces just started to come together. She is so well connected in that entire world. And in our initial conversation together, she was like, I have to send you this person's email. You need to reach out to this person. Oh, you want to enroll tribal kids on set? That's perfect. I'll connect you with the executive producer of Children of the Setting Sun, a local production company that deals in Native storytelling. So at first, one of the things that I was afraid of was being able to chase down all these leads to tell this story. But after we connected with Ellie and a few other individuals, it seems like it's a really interconnected world and the pieces are just starting to come together. So in terms of next steps, it's meeting with all those people and figuring out if they want to be on board.
Who do you conceptualize as the audience for this?
So in terms of audience, the way that I've been trying to summarize the theme of the story, there's reef net fishing, there's a history of the Lummi Nation, there's all of the nuance behind the politics, the legal barriers, the cultural barriers, and like all of that fine detail that we'll explore in the series. But thematically, it's essentially a story about identity and how identities change, what you do, how you react when your identity is changing, perhaps because of forces outside your control. So, when I had that realization, I just started seeing examples of that everywhere that I looked. Perhaps one sector of this audience could be artists that are feeling threatened because of the new generative AI craze. They feel a sense of their identity being taken away from them as an artist. And of course, myself, I consider myself a potential target audience of this just because of my Choctaw heritage and the sense that I feel several steps removed from it. So thematically, the story is about identity and anybody that feels like core tenets of their identity are being threatened or changing.
What do you hope to see come out of the series?
Yeah, so in terms of what I'd like to see come out of the series, first and foremost would be a cultural reset surrounding the public conversation on reef net fishing. There's been this sprawl and it's been covered by different publications and they've described it from different perspectives. The white reef netters, the sustainability angle, the technological angle. What I'd really like to do first and foremost is land that this is a fishing technique rooted in Native heritage, particularly with the Lummi Nation. It is culturally significant. It is a crucial tenet of their identity. And I just want to flesh that out and land that first and foremost, with them leading the way. Like I said, I want to get out of the way and let them land that story. And then beyond that, if this content can go out, live in the world, and somehow accelerate the return of reef net fishing to the Coast Salish Sea, that would be incredible. In 5, 10, 15 years, if we're looking out at Lummi Bay and seeing reef net rigs scattered about, that I would just consider that a huge success. And if the series plays even the tiniest part in making that happen, I would be thrilled.
Thanks for listening to Northwest Reports. This week's guest was Samuel Wolfe. This episode was produced by me, Maleeha Syed, and Sarah Bernard. The story editor was Ryan Famuliner. Our executive producer is Sarah Menzies. You can subscribe to Northwest Reports wherever you listen. And whatever platform you're listening on, please review us. We'd love to know what you think of the show. Also, if you would like to support the work we do at Cascade PBS, whether it's our lineup of podcasts, the video docuseries we stream every week, or the in-depth reporting we deliver every day, go to crosscut.com/membership. In addition to supporting our journalism, members receive complete access to the on-demand programming of Cascade PBS. For the latest political, environmental, and culture news from the Pacific Northwest, visit crosscut.com. Northwest Reports is a product of Cascade PBS. I'm Maleeha Syed. We'll be back soon with another episode.